Hi, this is Magnus with another chess game for you. I always like to point out at the start of my videos that I'm not an expert in any way. I'm just a regular guy trying to learn and improve his chess, and hopefully these videos might be helpful to some other people along the way. So in this game I was playing the white pieces. I started off with my normal queen's pawn opening. My opponent did the same, and we continued to develop our minor pieces in a pretty standard way, and we got a pretty symmetric opening here with the knights out and the bishops out. At this point I'd castled and he made a pawn break. Now I often play this setup as white, and you have to be careful of this pawn because obviously there's a potential fork there. So I took him, and he took back with the knight. I moved my rook over to the semi-open file, semi-open because his pawn is gone, of course. And he brought his bishop out to pin my knight. Now this happens to me a lot. My normal solution is to bring the knight over here, or to bring the bishop in. But these days I'm beginning to think maybe those moves are, a bit passive. And I've got my queen sitting here. So I thought, that I'll just leave it. I'll just, leave it there, and I'll encourage him to leave. So I made this h3 move, which I'm more inclined to make these days. I always used to be bothered about messing up my pawn structure. So I encouraged him to either make his move, take the knight, or move the bishop away, and indeed he took the knight. I think it was at this point that that I, had realized that his knight is sitting here. So I can't take him with the queen, so I took him with the pawn. And at this point, his pinning of the knight has done its work. He's messed up my pawn structure. He castled, and I'm bothered about the pawn structure. But I recently watched a match from last year's World Chess Championship with the current world champion, who's not Magnus Carlsen. His name is Gukesh Damarayu. Forgive me if I've got the pronunciation wrong. But in his game, on the castled king side, he was playing white too. He launched a pawn storm, and he got his pawns up here somewhere. So he wasn't bothered about his king being exposed. But what he did do was he placed two bishops. If my memory serves me correctly, he placed them on these two squares here. Placing a bishop over here somewhere when my pawns have become messed up is something I've done in the past. So I'm thinking about getting this bishop over here onto this square, which is why I made this pawn move. He didn't take the pawn, he moved another pawn out. So I made the first of those moves to get my bishop in position. Again, he pushed the pawn, and I took one of his pawns. He pushed again, and I had to move my bishop away from his pawn. He took my pawn, and I got the bishop into position. So I was quite happy. Now at this point, pieces are beginning to build up in the center, and I brought my knight out. He brought another pawn out. I brought a knight out. And it's at this point that I decided that I perhaps needed to try to clear away some of these pieces from the middle. Now, this is not a perfect exchange by any means. But we exchanged a bunch of pieces. He blunted his queen. And we ended up in this situation. Now, he blunders again at this point by moving his knight in front of his rook, obviously attacking my queen, but he's left his rook hanging here, so I'm able to take. And at this point, he brings his knight out, and this is the situation I wanted to reflect on. What would you do in this situation? The move I decided upon was to just take him, and my reasoning being that this would be a much easier end game to win. It would be very straightforward with his rook off the board. With his rook on the board and a knight, I think he could be quite annoying. I'm not saying I couldn't checkmate him. I'm pretty confident I could. But I just thought, this is a bit more straightforward. Even with his knight on the board, he did give me, I think another 10 moves or so before I managed to checkmate him. So I just wondered, what does Stockfish feel about that type of approach? It's not kind of a brilliant queen sacrifice in order to win some amazing position. It's just a simple, right, I'll have your rook and you can have my queen. And my motivation being, I think I can checkmate you pretty easily now. So what did Stockfish say about it? I looked it up. It said it thought it was a good move, not the best move, it said. It wanted me to save my queen, but it said it was a good move. And I think it kind of illustrates a bit of a shift in my thinking when I play chess these days. I used to even think getting a queen at the end of a game, when you got a lot of power at the end of a game and your opponent has, depleted his resources, I used to think it was almost cheating to go and get a queen by advancing a pawn to the end. And I was always, locked in to the idea of trying to checkmate him without doing that. These days, if there's an easy queen to be grabbed at the end of the game, I go ahead and do it. So anyway, there it is. I hope you enjoyed the game. I'm interested in your thoughts on that situation. Would you have done the queen trade? Be nice to hear what you think. That's it for now. See you next time.